Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the second part in our double feature of Lightroom 4. Today, Stephen will be covering creative application. Hopefully everyone can hear and audio is working for people. I just want to go ahead and get a few housekeeping items underway. This event is going to be recorded, and if you have any questions either during or after the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A panel that can be found on the right side of your screen or the chat panel. And so now I'll go ahead and introduce Stephen. So Stephen Burns has been a corporate instructor and lecturer in the application of digital art and design for the past 15 years. He has been exhibiting digital fine art internationally at several galleries, and he teaches digital manipulation workshops in the San Diego and abroad, and is an instructor on www.xtrain and Photoshop Cafe. You can access his training at www.xtrain.com/Stephen, and he is the author of several books published by Charles River Media. They include The Art of Poser in Photoshop, Photoshop CS and Trickery, FX, Advanced Photoshop CS2 Trickery FX, Advanced Photoshop CS3 Trickery and FX, and The Art of Poser Pro in Photoshop CS4. He is also a contributing author in the book Secrets of Award-Winning Digital Artists and Photoshop CS Savvy. Currently, he is the president of the San Diego Photoshop Users Group, and his teaching style comes from his ability to share an understanding of Photoshop so that the student has the ability to intuitively apply it to his or her creations. He makes his living as a corporate trainer teaching workshops in the use of digital cameras as well as Photoshop for business applications. Stephen's expertise also extends into 3D animation and digital video special effects and editing, on which he also produces educational tapes and DVDs. So, without further ado, we're going to pass it over to Stephen for the presentation on Lightroom 4. Stephen, it should be all yours.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to assume everybody is seeing my desktop. As a little notice here is flashing in front of me saying that everybody is now seeing my desktop. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Burns, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. And I am an author. You may know me most through my books, the Photoshop Trickery and Effects series book. My latest one is the Photoshop CS5 Trickery and Effects. I am currently working on a new CS6 book as we speak, and the new book will be an interactive book in addition to a book on the shelf, where you can actually read this on an iPad, but it'll be interactive. There'll be videos involved. There'll be 3D movement involved. So I'm pretty excited about the new books that are coming up. Go to my website, chromeillusion.com. If you go to my home page, this is the front page, and you'll notice the link to the new CS6 beta. And if you have not tried the new beta yet, I highly recommend it. So click here, go download it. And you can also access more information about me and my workshops under the workshops link. If you prefer to go and see the artwork that I do, access some of the galleries here. That will give you a little bit of understanding of where I am as an artist and where I'm going with this. And what I'm going to do today is I want to share with you a little bit about how I am using Lightroom. And Lightroom, last week, we went over the new features of Lightroom 4. This week, I'm going to show you how I integrate Lightroom as a creative source. Now, Lightroom for me as an artist, as you might have guessed through some of my work that I've just shared with you, is not the only tool that I'm using to manipulate my work. It's just the beginning stage. It's primarily a tool to organize all of my work, categorize the work. It's a database engine being run by this catalog, and my current catalog under Open Recents is the Lightroom 4 catalog, so-called new in Lightroom 4 catalog. I actually created it specifically for this webinar. So I have several photos here, and I'm going to go into here. I'm going to show you a little bit of the workflow, some of the creative aspects of Lightroom 4 that I use quite a bit. And I'm going to start here with the library and the develop module. Now, first of all, we're going to see we need to import our work into Lightroom. Now, for those of you out there who do not know exactly what Lightroom is, it's Adobe Camera Raw from Photoshop and Bridge from Photoshop put together in one program. Where they differ is in the functionality of a database engine that we call a catalog, which I showed you right here. We can make a new catalog, open a catalog, or open recent catalogs. And I have various catalogs that I have created. Currently, we're working in the webinar catalog right here. What this catalog does, or what this database engine will do, is it imports your photos from off of your hard drive so that now you're utilizing your database information to view and manipulate all of your photos. And there's a lot of advantages to this as well. All right, now I created right over here, when I import my work, everything's imported through a folder that I created on my hard drive or external hard drive called Zero New Lightroom 4. When I hit the import, it imports all the images and the folders, and if I click on the folders individually, I can see my work, and you can see various thumbnails of images that I've taken here, some from Death Valley, some from Joshua Tree National Park, some from the Oregon coast, and so forth. Now, I'm going to take an image. I'm going to choose some of these images and place them into what's called a collection. Now, I created a collection already called Webinar. Now, you can easily create collections by going into your main folder, which for me is my Zero New Lightroom 4 folder. Select the images that you want to add to the collections, and I'll go ahead and do that right now. How about if I grab this one here, and maybe a couple of these. How about go to the CR2 here. Let's grab one here, maybe another one here. I'm going to hold the control key down. That's why it's not there. We are. And if you hit the plus symbol on the right-hand side of collections, you can create a new collection. Name it what you want, click create, and you can tell it to also include those selected photos. Now, this collection concept is important. I think it's important to your workflow of adding creative aspects to your imagery. I've already created a new collection, so I'm not going to do it again. It's called the Webinar Collection. So what if I want to import other photos into this existing collection? I will select this one and this one and this one. Let's go ahead and make sure those are chosen, and simply drag and drop it inside there. And what these collections are, in a way, they're virtual copies. Virtual copies meaning that they're not duplicates of image, they're duplicates of database information, that database information being your metadata and your JPEG thumbnail. All right, let's look at some creative uses of this. Let's go to this image right here. I'm going to select it, hit the space bar on the keyboard. Let's look at a view, full view. And I want to add some, creative touches to this. Now, there's a lot of things that I can do. Let's go to the Develop module, click on the Develop module, or hit the D key on my keyboard. It automatically will move me to the settings for adding exposure correction and color corrections, as well as adding some of these presets, so special effects, prefixes here. So presets, I meant to say. So aged photo, for example. I'm going to click this one right here, and as I go through presets here, this one, we're adding all types of effects that are the result of various combinations of these settings under the Develop module. All right? Now, let's go down a little more. I have an old Polar here, Lightroom effects. Now, they're organized in folders, which I think is a great way to work. I'm going to go ahead and cascade this up. Lightroom effects presets, grainy heavy. Click that one. It's hard to see. But if I get in a little closer, Control plus, we can see all the heavy grain that is added to this particular image. All right, so pull it around. All right, let's go back and Command Control minus, bring it on down. How about the corners black and the corners white? There we are. Adding a little bit of effect of vignette. And vignette 2, which is adding a little bit darker corners right around the edge here. And we have all types of, let's go down to the next one. Just go down here on your own, play around with these presets, see what they do. This one adds some extra saturation, some extra punch, sharpen faces, an auto tone setting. All right, so we also have user presets. Now, we're going to make our own preset in just a little bit. Now, I'm going to share with you as to how I like to work. I can reset this. If I want this to go right back to the original image before any manipulations or any of these presets have been applied, hit reset. It'll take you right on back to the standard raw file. This is coming from my Canon file. It's a .cr2 designation. Now, I have all types of choices up here. Last week we went over this and we talked about what each of these would actually do. Now, let me share with you how I like to work. What I'm finding with photographers is that they have gotten away from the concept of using black and white information, which is very, very important in terms of your color rendition. In other words, understanding depth and value, three-dimensionality is defined in those black and white values, okay? So what I like to do is I like to start first with black and white. Now, I can also use a preset. Come over here to preset, and we have all different types of filters. A blue filter, all right, was adding all types of little details on the midtones of our image. I can go to a green filter and watch how each of these are done. So we are favoring the green channels. What's happening if we're working in Photoshop, we're favoring the tonal information from the green channel, the red channel. Here's one for the orange channel. I like what's going on here in the background. The goal here is to make our primary subject jump out here. I want this background that's competing too much with the foreground information. Let's try the red filter. The red channel will harbor all of your contrast information, extreme blacks and extreme whites. Keep that in mind. Red high contrast filter is even greater amounts of contrast than the red filter. Access the yellow filter. That works, okay? What is done between the highlights and shadows for the background and overall is they gave it a little bit more pop, but the contrast isn't so extreme. It's less extreme than the orange filter, in my opinion. If I click on the orange filter, you can see it's a little greater range between your shadows and the highlights. So I'm going to go ahead and click the yellow filter, and let's go ahead and work this image so that our main primary subject is going to pop out to the foreground while the background recedes a little bit. I'm going to start by using my gradient option. So I click on the gradient, and automatically you see the panel for the gradient jump forward. Let's actually apply a gradient here. Click and drag it right down just like so. I'm only going to want to come right above this rock here. That's our primary subject matter. And I'm going to take the exposure down just a little bit. See what I'm doing? I can come right back over here and stretch it out a little bit more to include a little bit more of a darkened area. And what I'm doing is I'm applying a gradient where the top half of the gradient is being affected, and effect is applying here. In this case, I'm affecting my exposure, where the rest of the image is not being touched. Now, this is just the beginning stages. I want to isolate the foreground subject and allow the background to go down and recede so that I'm gaining some depth and dimensionality in my image. Too much contrast going on back here. So within the same panel, I can also mess around with the highlights. Bring the highlights down. You see what's happening? I'm moving the slider back and forth. It's targeting the highlights only, bringing those values down. Next, I'm going to decrease the contrast a bit. There we are. That's making it flatter, greater contrast, or even flat. Although this is even interesting, I'm going to flatten it down back here for a reason. Now, bring the exposure down. There we are. So as you can start to see, the background visually is starting to interfere less with the foreground elements, okay? So we're not quite done yet. I'm going to bring the exposure up just a little bit. There we are. Foreground, middle ground, background. We should always be keeping in mind as we're manipulating our photograph. Also, we need to keep in mind shadows, midtones, and highlights. Using values to guide our eye through the scene, but using depth to make sure that our primary subject is being represented well. Now, how else can we work on this? Let's go to the brush now. In addition, I clicked on the brush and click on that once again. And I have the panel. We went over this last week, so I'm not going to explain everything in detail here. I'm going to explain what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and that I'm going to have new selected so that I can put down a new little icon. I'm going to place it just right up here. What's happening here is I've applied an adjustment point, which is just a reference point for the adjustments that I'm going to make. What adjustments is it that I would like to make? I would really like to bring those highlights way down again. I would like to bring the exposure down a little bit as well. Now I'm going to start to paint the effect. Next to the P key on my keyboard on the right-hand side, to be exact, are my bracket keys. Bracket to the right will allow my brush to go bigger. Bracket to the left allows it to go smaller. And bracket with the Shift key held down. Now, if you look at this border around my mouse, let's go ahead and make this a little larger so you can see what I'm doing here. Bring it right about there. You see a gap, which is our feathered edge between the inside circle and the outside circle. Shift bracket to the left will decrease the feather. Shift bracket to the right increases the feather. So I'm going to give it a nice little feather here and bring it down. I've already made some adjustments. Let's go ahead and start to paint those adjustments in. There we are. So there we are. I'm going to make a nice smooth movement across, bringing the background down. I also want to do the same thing here. Let's go back here with the water. There we are. We're bringing those whites down, bringing the size of my brush using my bracket keys, and it's going to tone down this water edge, these are highlights in the water, shadows, midtones, and the highlights. I want to reduce those values in the background so that they're flatter and deeper and darker so that our main subject in the foreground maintains a full tonal range look so that it stands out more. So I'm going to bring this on over, bring this a little higher. I'm starting to get a little bit of a nice broad, even stroke here. Bring it across, bringing it down. See, is that making sense here? Now, you're probably wondering, why in the world is he working with black and white instead of just color? You're going to find out in just a little bit. So I'm going to paint this on down here, and I'm going to add just to make a medium-sized brush, add a little more of an effect here, bring this down on the background. All right, there it is. Let's add another point. Go and hit the New button. Select a point right down here for the foreground. I want the foreground to stand out, and as you can see right back here, I missed a little area, didn't it? You know why? Look, because I was zoomed in too close. If that happens, no big deal. Simply, what we're going to do, go back to our Develop module, hit our brush, our points come right back up, click on the point. If you hover over the point, you actually get to see the red mask of the areas that you've actually manipulated. I want to extend this, right? So we're going over and paint those on in and paint this on in, and we're good to go mostly. If you want to paint it out, hold your Option or your Alt key, and you can paint it out, and it goes away. I want to bring it back, take away the Option or Alt, and bring it back in. Neat little shortcut that'll help your workflow there. Hit the New button here. Actually, I've already laid one down, so I'm going to actually target this point. It's highlighted. The panel, the adjustment panel for that reference point jumps up. Let's just go and bring down the exposure just a little bit here, about halfway. And let's go ahead and paint in the effect. See that? It's coming down a little grayer, bringing some detail in my highlights, bring the brush a little smaller for this little edge. I can add a little bit over here if I like, and I'm going to add a little bit there. Still keeping the foreground brighter than the background. Shadows, midtones, and highlights, foreground, middle ground, and background. All right, keeping that in mind all the time, bringing the tonal ranges down, and there we are. All right, so what am I doing here? How about if we hit our Escape key a couple of times, and that'll take us out of the editing mode for our adjustment brush, and it's allowing us to see the overall image. How about if I go back to my main panel, add a little more, let's see, let's bring the whites, extreme whites down just a little bit, and maybe add a slight contrast. There we are. Okay, that's going to work. How about clarity? bring a little more clarity. See how sharp that's getting? But what if I bring it back the opposite way? Let's get in a little closer, zoom in closer. Not that close. There we are. And pull that on over. Take the clarity the opposite way. It starts to soften it up just a little bit. So you can decide how you want to apply this. I'm going to keep the clarity, just a little extra sharpness from there. Now, where are we going with this whole thing? Working with values is going to help you to gain dimension and depth in your work. So what's happened here when I applied the preset, all it's doing is applying various combinations of our special effects, our color adjustments and saturation and sharpening and vibration and vibrance and saturation as well in combination. And what we can do is we can come back over and modify these adjustments. Now, the adjustment that I applied was black and white, using the black and white filter and adjusting each of the values of these colors. So if I go to the red here and move it back and forth, let's see if we can see an effect. In fact, let's hit the targeted adjustment tool, click on it, up and down, we can see we can make more of an effect. So if I want the highlights in this rock to be a little bit more, to pop out a little more, I can click and drag up and down. Again, as you can see, still working as a black and white. Now, all we need to do is click the color and see what we've actually done or how it's going to look as a color image. Click on it there. Now, look at that. Much, much stronger. Now, I want this to be a virtual copy. Why? Because I want to compare it to my original settings. Now, what I've done is I've applied it to the original virtual copy inside my other folder, okay, which is inside my collection folder. So if I right-click right on that copy, create a virtual copy, it's simply going to duplicate this virtual copy with all of its settings. Of course, all of these settings are saved inside of our catalog. If I go back to the original virtual copy, come right over to the right-hand side and hit reset, we get to see what it looked like before. Okay? So before and after. Before and after. Okay, now if I want to keep that black and white, right-click on this virtual copy and simply create another virtual copy. We'll go back to this one right here and just take off the color and go back to black and white. So now we can see a progression. We went from here, and then we made it a black and white to here, and then select the final image in color right there. It's a great little educational tool for keeping track of everything that you've done. Just simply create virtual copies, as many of them as you think you need. Okay, well, let's have some more fun. What more can we do? Let's keep this concept in mind, but now let's get Photoshop involved here. How about if we grab another image? Let's select this one here. I already have two of these in here. I have two TIFF files. I have a TIFF file and the original CR2. I'm going to work with the original CR2, and I want to go into Photoshop and edit this. Let's go Work and Magic in Photoshop, right-click, and edit in Photoshop CS6. You notice I have other options as well, Photomatics as well. Now, if you want to specify another program, what you can do is go to your Edit menu, Preferences, and under your External Editing, by default, Photoshop's going to be your first one. The second one, you can customize it to whatever you want. I have Photomatics chosen. I hit the Choose folder or Choose folder and actually navigate to my Photomatics file, okay? So I think that makes sense. That should make sense to you. I'm going to go ahead and just cancel it right now and not make any adjustments. Now, I'm going to right-click, edit in Photoshop CS6. It's going to open up Photoshop CS6. Now, Photoshop is already open. I highly recommend that you have these programs open before you actually transfer from Lightroom into those programs, because it may take a little longer to open up the programs and it's a little more, you know, memory being used. So have them open ahead of time. Now, here it is. It sees my files, opens it up in a layer. I'm going to duplicate my layer. Let's go and add some magic to this real quick. Let's go here and let's apply a black and white. Same concept that I used in inside of what? Inside the Lightroom, right? Let's make it a little different. Image adjustment. Let's go to black and white. All right. And what this is going to allow you to do is to adjust your values, or the value equivalent of the color. It's going to take each color and allow you to adjust its value from black to mid-range to white. And if I click and hold on here and drag left to right, I can make that value of red brighter or darker, which I'm going to do right about there. I'm going to make it a little darker. We're adding detail inside of our highlights, and also the background is separated from our primary subject matter, here being the letters. All right, so I'm going to click OK, and here is my black and white equivalent of the red. Let's go turn this off and on. Let's go ahead and get in a little closer. What I like to do now is to modify this a little bit. Hit the F key so I can go to full screen mode. And I'm going to modify it by duplicating this again and using my layer blend mode. How about something like overlay? Or how about hard light? Okay, that really makes it very, very rich, doesn't it? All right, the whole idea is I want the shadow details from the top one to be applied to the bottom. So I like the bottom the way it is. I want these values, the darker values, to give it more contrast. So select it, change this to darken, which means only the darkened values will be applied, nothing else will be applied. Click it there. Now it's going to be hard to see at first. I'm going to get in real close and see if you guys can actually see the effects here. You'll notice there's more contrast being applied because the extreme dark values are applied to the image underneath. So if I turn this off and on, it's very, very difficult to see. But I tell you what, how about if we duplicate this? And that's going to be very, very, let's go ahead and hit this here. And of course, we can go to something like, let's go to color burn or darken color. Okay, very difficult to see because the two are so dark. So we can come in here and apply other adjustments. How about we go to a little bit more of a multiply, but only just a small amount of the multiply. All right, and let's merge these two layers together. Go ahead, right-click. Go ahead and select this one. Go to our menu, drop menu, merge those together. Okay, and let's go ahead and just give it one last little adjustment. Let's increase it, give it a little more snap. There we are. And while preserving our highlights. Now let's go ahead and apply this as a layer blend mode to luminosity. We're applying the black and white information only. So before and after, before and after. Okay, now that's a quick little effect there, and I can apply this in various stages. So that's too strong for your taste. We can reduce it down, and that's all we need to do now is to save it. Command or Control S, hit save. All right, save command. Okay, we didn't see a 6. It has background saved. I accidentally hit it twice, and there it is. Pops right back into Lightroom. It makes another virtual copy, and all your adjustments have been made. So what are the creative things that we can do through Lightroom, especially working with other programs? I have 3 of these here. This is an HDR image, and I have it selected. I'm going to scroll using my arrow keys to the right, and you can see the various exposures. This exposure compensating for my shadows, this one compensating for the highlights, adding details for the highlights back here, and this one accommodating a natural exposure for the neutral values, the mid-tone values. Again, that shadows, mid-tone, the highlights concept comes in play again. So I want to use Photomatix.